Hello, John.
Hello, Oliver.
Today we're going to talk about an article you have there in front of you, and it's to do with the LGBT movement.
That's correct. It's an article in the Catholic Universe by Caroline Farrow, who's a writer, a journalist in that paper, also a broadcaster. And the headline is, "I'm free to ask, is it really up to the state police hurt feelings?" ? She was put to the pin of her collar by a complaint that was issued against her, and she says, readers may now be aware, I broke one of the basic rules of journalism last week, as one is supposed to be responsible for reporting stories, not becoming one. Readers may now be aware that following the public outcry, Susie Green, Chief Executive Officer of Mermaids, the charity set up to promote the cause of transgender children, decided to withdraw her police complaint against me, which begs the question as to why she brought it in the first place. Surely if a crime has been committed, it ought to be investigated regardless of the wishes of the supposed victim. As more details emerged about my supposed crime, it became ever clearer that Mrs. Green was playing a desperately unpleasant PR game, and one that came at great cost to my family. Once she realised that prosecuting a niche Catholic journalist who also happened to be a mum of 5 children, all of school age, was not going to be such a good look for her, Mrs. Green began telling various TV companies that she intended to drop the charges, which resulted in a flurry of calls from shows wanting me to go on the air to give my side of the story. The problem was that I couldn't. Mrs. Green may have told various media outlets that she was dropping the charge, but she hadn't actually gone to the police to inform them, so I didn't dare to comment in terms of why I had made the actual tweets involved, in case it might be construed as having malicious intent. This is the transgender nightmare that people are in. There's also a difference between stating that one intends to drop the charge and following through those actions. I had no idea whether or not the police may still continue to pursue the case even if Mrs. Green decided to drop the charges. The lawyer I had instructed informed me what I already knew, that this was a politically motivated charge intending to set a precedent that misgendering, deliberately using the wrong name or pronoun, constituted a crime, and that I was likely to face a tough interview. I also didn't know exactly what it was I was supposed to have said, and we knew that the offending tweets would only be pulled out at interview in order to catch me out. In many of their statements to the press, Sussex Police had confirmed that I had been invited to attend a voluntary interview. However, the investigating officer had informed me in no uncertain terms that if I refused to attend, a summons would then be issued for my arrest. I certainly didn't feel as though I was just popping in for a friendly chat to give my side of the story. In fact, after telling me that the CPS, the Crime Prevention System, had requested that I was brought in to give a taped interview under caution, the police officer brusquely informed me that I would need a solicitor and suggested that she would arrange a duty solicitor straight away. Listen to all this. Still in a state of heightened fear and panic, I declined and said that I would arrange my own. I had no intention of being advised to accept a caution, which would be an admission of wrongdoing from a duty solicitor with links to the police, who might pressure me into doing this in order to effect a hasty conclusion. I wanted specialist and someone whom I knew would be behind me all the way. The police officer did not seem keen to accept this, which was when the warning about the summons was issued. I was now refusing to attend, but simply asserting my right to use the solicitor of my choice. Look, just let me book you a duty solicitor now, insisted the police officer, clearly exasperated, at which point I gave them back a piece of their own medicine, informing them that their behaviour was making me feel alarmed and distressed, and that I would call them back in due course once I had appointed my own solicitor. In the intervening period, Susie Green went live on the BBC Victoria Derby show and highlighted my vile, inverted commas, tweets, as well as releasing them in a statement via Mermaids to demonstrate the abuse she had received. Frustrated that I was still unable to publicly comment, I was nonetheless delighted. The tone of the tweets was undoubtedly harsh, but a few things became clearer. First, I hadn't been targeted Susie with abusive messages sent to her, but instead made trenchant criticism of her decision to take her son to Thailand for sex reassignment surgery on his 16th birthday. The words mutilation, castration and abuse were used. It was not my intention to cause Mrs. Green distress and anxiety. The tweets were not sent out of a malicious intent, a desire to hurt her, but to open up the conversation about the realities of medical treatment for transgender children. Do you see what we're doing? Isn't it desperate? If the words seem brutal, precisely because the provision itself is incredibly brutal, and I am sick of the euphemism being employed around the subject, with the harsh reality being hidden beneath a veneer of tolerance, compassion and acceptance. Mrs. Green, inverted commas, charity, actively campaigns for age limits to be scrapped when it comes to deciding upon appropriate medical intervention to be given to children who identify as transgender. Currently, British medical ethics only allow for puberty blockers. She had given them to her earlier, given under the age of 16. In Mrs. Green's case, she administered first puberty blockers in her son at the age of 12, before moving on to cross-sex hormones at the age of 13. Medication which sterilised him for the rest of his life.
Jeez.
Yeah. See,
pretty severe.
This is your transgender. Yeah. This is what this government in this country has inflicted on the people, and have seen fit to vote for it to their eternal shame and damnation. There is a whole lot more that I could write about how Mrs. Green has repeatedly over the years used her child for advocacy of a course of treatment which most parents would find questionable. But for now, I am simply glad that the police saw fit to drop the case, and also now that the discussion of this treatment might involve and the advocacy work of Mermaids has become a talking point. I am not the only individual who Mrs. Green has attempted to prosecute and silence for stating things which were not to her taste on social media. And while one might well decide that my tweets were harsh or unkind, though I stress no spite was intended on any part, on my part, is it really of the role of the police to investigate people for hurting other people's feelings on social media? This is what we're in this country. We cannot open our mouth publicly on the radio, we say, in the public radio or anywhere, and issue and make statements along those lines about matters that we find objectionable and intolerable. Do you see where this transgender ideology, with a very small minority of perhaps 1 or 2% of people, where their influence is gone? When you have a so-called liberal government that's anti-Catholic and anti-Christian, anything is possible.
Thank you very much, John.
Thank you.